This is David Diaz, former WBC lightweight champion of the world, and you're listening to The Grueling Truth.
Welcome, everybody, to the Grueling Truth Boxing Legend Show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, Replenishing Care Technologies, and Power Plus Mouth Guards. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and tonight I want to welcome to the show former heavyweight contender Gerry Cooney. How you doing, Gerry?
Hey, great to be on your show, Tim. Looking forward to talking, and life is great, and boxing is great, and I'm so glad I'm also a radio host. I'm on Sirius XM Channel 93 Rush on Monday and Friday nights, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Channel 93. And I'm looking forward to being with you guys tonight.
All right. So just tell us a little bit about your childhood, how you got started boxing. I know you grew up in Long Island.
Yeah, it's a great story. You know, I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters. My father was a very big drinker and a very angry guy, and so we kind of hit the brunt of most of that anger. And my older brother left the house when he was 15, and shortly after he started going to a boxing gym. He liked boxing. And so I got a couple of days a week. I get to go to the gym and be with him. I loved him, and before you know it, him and I took to fighting, and we both entered into the New York State Polo Club Championship. I was 16, he was 19. I was a middleweight, he was a heavyweight. And we both battled on and made it to the finals. And, you know, I remember that night my brother didn't run a lot. And I thought, you know what, if someone has to lose, I prayed to God. I said, let it be me. And that night we both fought. We had a great fight. And he had fought some Olympic guy from the Virgin Islands and lost the decision. And I won the middleweight championship. And that's how my career started. I liked what it did for me. It helped me express my anger for the confusion growing up in the household I did. And then they put my picture in the paper, so they made me somebody. And it fed me from there.
Yeah, and you won a couple Golden Gloves. Did you go to the Olympic trials? I know you got invited to the Olympic trials.
I got invited to the finals of the Olympic trials in 1976, but my father was sick, and I used that as pretty much for my reason not going. And part of it was, you know, a teacher I had, an English teacher in high school, told me I have to stay close to my family. But realistically, back then, I didn't have the self-esteem. I didn't think I deserved it. I probably wasn't good enough. And it's one of the biggest regrets I had in my life. I tell people, you know, get the information and follow your dream, and don't quit on yourself. You got to fight. You know, you fight the good fight.
Yeah, so you turned pro 1977. What do you remember about your pro debut?
Oh, it was great. You know, I mean, I was fighting in Sunnyside Gardens, which is a famous arena. As a matter of fact, it was the last fight they had there in Queens. And I knocked the guy out in the first round. And my career was off. What was good for me was that, you know, at the time when, you know, my schoolmates and friends were going away to college to further education, I had to find a career and how to raise a family, and so boxing was my next gift. I mean, in '76 I watched the Olympics, and Howard Davis got signed by Rappaport and Jones, and I was, you know, traveling around looking for a manager, and we bounced from this guy to that guy, and then we ran into Rappaport and Jones. And what I liked about it was that Howard Davis had a nice contract with CBS, so I would be able to be showcased on his cards, and that's the reason why I went with Rappaport and Jones. Probably I regret that, looking back. I wish I could have had someone who really cared about me and about my life and what I was doing, and tried to make me the best fighter I could be. But it is what it is, and rose in the ranks and fought a lot of good, tough guys and got a chance to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Yeah, and you returned early on the Great White Hope. What did you think about that moniker? I'm sure you probably didn't appreciate it that much.
I was lucky. I had a few friends that I grew up with. And, what I did was, it was such a great experience to be thrown into that spotlight. And I had my friends keep me clear, and we hung out together, we trained together, and I never really paid attention to it at all. I thought it was very distasteful. And, the funny part about it is, about 6 months ago, my wife did one of those tests, and they send away your saliva or something. And what I found out was that my grandfather's mother was African American, so I had 9% African American, so it was a lie.
Oh, that would have killed it for Don King, wouldn't it?
There you go.
So,
but I had a great. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I had a great trainer, Victor Valley, who really was a great teacher. He was a great fighter, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he was kind of like the father figure I never had.
And
so he taught me.
Yeah, go ahead, because that was actually my next question, was about your relationship with Victor Valley.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and he was a very smart man. He had some great fighters in his day, and I really liked what he was teaching me. He did have an anger issue in him that, he wanted things his way, and, we butted heads a couple of times during my career, but all in all, he was a great man and a great teacher, and I wished that during that time I could have heard more of what he was teaching me. What I know now, after the fact, is so much, I could ingest a lot more of what he was teaching me at the time when my life was going so fast. But all in all, it was a great experience. With some great guys. Unfortunately, Don King owned most of the heavyweights, and because I wasn't signed to him, he had no interest in giving me any of the experience of fighting some of those guys. So when I got the real shot with him, I could be more prepared. So I regret that. But Holmes and I today are great friends. We do a lot of things during the year together. And he was a great champion, one of the top 5 in the history of the game. And I got a chance to have my way at him.
Yeah, and before that, I think the fight that really brought you into national prominence was probably, I think it was a CBS fight against Jimmy Young, who was a guy that nobody really looked good against. You got him out of there in 4 rounds, and I think Jimmy was coming off like an 8 or 9 fight win streak and was rising in the rankings. What do you remember? What do you recall about that fight?
Well, I knew he was a tough guy, very awkward, made you miss, you couldn't hit him. And like I said, I watched him through the years. Boyle Foreman's fight, he really beat Norton, he beat Ali, and got robbed a lot. And so he was on a 9-fight winning streak when we fought, and it was a great opportunity for me. And he was so concerned about my left hook that he left himself open underneath, and I caught him with an uppercut and sliced him between his eyes. And once you cut somebody like that, and he's affected by it, you go for the kill. And that was one of the things that I stopped him, and he couldn't come out for the 4th round. And it helped me move up the ranks.
All right, so that brought you to the fight before you got to Larry Holmes, which was Ken Norton, which I think was, the best you've ever looked. Ken Norton at the time, I think he was coming off with like a draw or a close win over Scott Ledoux. I know he was a little bit past his prime, but I don't think anybody thought they were going to see you take him apart in less than a minute. It had to be, maybe a little bit intimidating walking in the ring at first with Ken Norton, a guy that everybody knew who he was.
Oh, yeah, hey, no doubt about it. It was Mandingo.
Yeah.
And he never, he made Ali look terrible. And I didn't know at the time, but if you backed him up, he couldn't get off. He had to be coming forward, and I was in great shape. Looking back that night, I could have beat anybody in the world. I was in such great shape. My training camp was so terrific. I was focused. I was interested into it. And so when the bell rang, I knew that I was going to let him taste my power because I wanted to, let him feel what I had to dish out. And I caught him with a nice body shot, and twice. And then I spun him into the corner, and I had two battering rams. And 54 seconds into that fight, they stopped. He was stuck on the rope. I didn't know it. And as a fighter, you're taught not to stop swinging. And every time I turned around, I looked at the referee, but he kept the fight going. So I brought the shots back. And in every paper in New York the next day, it has 4 punches from death. And I still get a chill in me when I watch that fight now. But
it does me too, because you see him there helpless, nobody's stopping it, and it's not like you can just stop if they haven't stopped the fight.
Right, and like I said, that night I could have beat any man in the world. I was such great shape and so fine-tuned and prepared. And then after that, the game started with Don King, and it took 13 months for me to get that fight. And little did I know that I needed experience. I was knocking everybody out, but Larry Holmes was a very smart, intelligent fighter and pugilist, and so I was going to need every tool I could have, and I didn't have enough experience, and that was Don King's way of keeping his championships. Even Holmes talked about that. Had I had fought Weaver first, I could have had a shot to beat him.
Yeah, and weren't you at some points of assigned to fight Weaver first?
Yes, if it never came off, or I don't really know what happened, but it never happened. And so I went right to Holmes. It took 13 months, and we had a great fight. Broke all kind of records, and it was only the first fight in my career that I wasn't nervous about. I was so angry with him and about the racist stuff and the black and the white.
Yeah, which was all just a Don King figment of the imagination thing.
Yeah, and I was just so angry. I didn't really care. I just wanted to hit him. And, listen, I had a few points taken away for low blows. He was pulling my head down, which made the shots go low.
Yeah.
And once I had 3 points taken away, I felt like I couldn't win. So you would think I would say, well, going out into the 13th round, let me try and knock this guy out right now. But I didn't think that way. I thought, wow, I can't win no more. I went out and let the guy hit me. Like, it's the dumbest move. Was
it one of those things where before the fight and the build-up, everybody said you couldn't win a decision because you'd never been 15 rounds before?
Right.
Was it something in the back of your head? If you didn't think you could win, maybe you were trying to prove that you could at least go to distance with him?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't that I didn't think I couldn't win. I was trying to go the distance. It was the dumbest thing. That's not how I ever fought. But also, I was in there with a great guy. And
at that point when you're fighting Holmes, you talk now in retrospect how you don't think you were prepared correctly. Do you think maybe a little bit of that led into the way you fought that fight? I don't know whether it was subconscious or maybe you thought it at the time that maybe you weren't prepared the way you should have been. It sounds like you thought you were prepared that way. But do you think maybe something subconsciously said, well, maybe I'm not ready for this guy yet?
Well, you know what? I started drinking after the Norton fight. I started, I felt like I deserved it, or maybe it was fear. I don't know what it was. But I started listening to the people, and they pulled me away, and they were pulling me away from the game. And I got to postpone. The fight was postponed. You don't know when it's going to take place, and I got an injury. There's a lot of stuff happened. But, listen, all being said and done, he was a great champion. I belonged in the ring with him that night. One thing I don't really understand is why there was never a rematch. I think that fight deserved a rematch.
Yeah, but do you think maybe it was because he knew that with the experience that you're going to be even tougher the next time? And Don King, and I don't mean Larry Holmes thinking that, but I think Don King thinking that, and he didn't want to risk it because he didn't own a part of you.
I don't know, but in today's time, you saw Kovalev Ward 2 this past week, and it was an exciting fight. It was a crazy fight because you saw Andre Ward really dismantle Kovalev, and Kovalev, I really believe, in that fight was quitting. He turned his back on Ward at one time. He was complaining about low blows when the shots were on his, by his belly button.
Well, I think the last one was low.
The last punch was low, no doubt, but the two before
and
that
I still think with the last blow being that before stopping the fight, I think they should have gave him 5 minutes. I don't think it would have made a difference in the fight, but I think if you're stopping it because of what happened after the last punch, I think that they should have gave him a chance to recover because I think that one was definitely low.
Well, I just think that the referee didn't see it because had he seen the low blow, he would have gave him 5 minutes. But I think he was watching Kovalev, and you could tell Kovalev was quitting. I mean, listen, he watched the fight again this week. He was done. He was not the bully anymore. And I think that the moment he got caught up in the moment and didn't respond well. I mean,
I don't think you'll ever get a third fight.
Also,
that's the politics of boxing too. If you look at the contract he had for that fight, he made very little money this last weekend, and it's really a fight that should have been on regular TV or regular HBO at least.
I think really what happened is that Mayweather, McGregor kind of hurt that show as well because I think it was a great fight. The first fight was great, and you would expect the second fight. But anyhow, that being said, he took the fight out of him, and I think that that's a real testament to Andre Ward and what he can do in the game.
He's a great fighter. I mean, you look at what he did to Super 6, and then the 2 wins over Kovalev. I mean, that's a super middleweight coming up to beat the legitimate light heavyweight champion of the world too.
Listen, he was knocked on his butt in that first fight. He got up and fought back and won the back 6 rounds. But anyway, that being said, who knows what was going on in King's head. I had 2 managers I couldn't stand. They hated each other. They kept me in the middle. I was tired of it. I felt like a pawn. And just, from my upbringing, dysfunctional family, into that, I just got fed up with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you talked about after Holmes, the no rematch, you only fought like 3 or 4 times in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, what happened there? Why was it like that?
Couldn't stand my managers. I just was disillusioned, with the people around me, and really no fights were being set my way.
So basically, they just sucked the love of the game away from it for you.
Well, it was just such a, terrible experience to fight with Holmes. The racism and the anger and the nonsense. And listen, it is what it was. And it didn't. I would come back once. I didn't know what I want to do with myself. And so I tried to come back and relive myself, and it would work. So
now,
that guy,
you got a shot. The thing I really want to get to is this. I mean, a lot of people do stuff early in their lives they shouldn't do. But most times people don't recover from that. I mean, how did you recover? I know you lost to Michael Spinks in 1987 when you were still having some problems with the alcohol, from what I read. 1988 is when you kicked it. I mean, what really was the impetus for you to stop doing what you were doing and to change your life?
Well, you know what? It stopped working, and then realistically, to lose to Michael Spinks was really, like, he didn't belong in the ring with me. He was a light heavyweight. He couldn't beat me, and I was a walking dead man that night. I was drinking going into the fight, and listen, it stopped working. And that was April 21st, 1988. I put alcohol down, and I've been sober over 29 years now, and boy, has my life turned around.
All right, and before we get to that part, I mean, I know you had one more fight with George Foreman. I think it was Gil Clancy. I mean, how did that come about?
I was promoting some fights of George's. We had formed a promotional company. My partner Tom Nara and Jeff Levine, and we had some rights to Duran. We would put on Duran Leonard 3. And we were promoting some of George Foreman's fights. And one day he said to me, listen, why don't we fight? And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm sober. I haven't had a drink. I've never really trained, and I thought money is good, and I figured I could beat him. I got in great shape. Probably came in way too light, but I was in terrific shape. And listen, I got caught with a shot. If you listen to, someone sent me this video with George Foreman talking to David Letterman. Did you ever hear that?
Was it the one about how hard you hit him?
Yeah, about this. You run into three guys that are devastating punches. You said me, Ron Lyle, and some other guy. But he said not only do you get hit, but it carries right through you. And so I had the opportunity to get in there with him. I thought I was going to whoop his ass. And I got caught with a shot, and, I didn't win. But what it did for me is it helped me to turn the page on my life and get on with my life. And that's a gift that a lot of people never get to get.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really surprises most people, when you talked about the racism from Don King for the Holmes-Cooney fight, was that you guys have become friends since then.
We have. We do a lot of stuff together, and we make half a dozen appearances a year together at different casinos, and I go to his benefits, he comes to my benefits. Like I just had a fight night. Every June, I put on a fight night in Hoboken, New Jersey. We put on a top amateur show. And then at the end of the night, I fight two guys from the community who I train all year. And they bring all their friends and sponsors, and we raise money for kids that don't have it so good.
Yeah.
And so he was there this year, and so we kind of cover for each other, and we're always going to be remembered for that fight. It was a great fight. I was in there with the man, and I did a good job. And it was only that lousy 13th round, and that 115-degree weather. That was the problem.
Yeah. Well, you'd never been near a 13-round fight before, I don't think, had you?
No. The most I had gone was 8 rounds.
Eddie the Animal Lopez, I think, was the first guy to take you to distance, right. 8 rounds.
That's right. He was a tough guy, but I gave him a good beating that night. He was a nasty guy.
He's a guy that almost beat John Tate, I think, right after that.
He was a tough guy, and then he quit on me. I brought him in for the sparring partner, and he quit on me. But anyway, it was a great experience in my life, and I get to help people. I get to meet new people all the time. I've done thousands of charities to bring the light to people that are less fortunate than we are, and help raise money and make their lives a little less stressful. So who's got it better than me?
Yeah, and the question is then, with the way you were living your life in 1982, maybe it's a good thing that you didn't win that fight against Larry Holmes.
You know what? I thought about that, and looking back on it, I knocked out Ken Norton in 1 round. You would think I'd say, really, I'm going to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. But whether it was my upbringing or whatever it was, I got lost that night, and I drifted. And I got a lot of regrets of my father's upbringing of his kids. But someone told me, said, Jerry, no matter what your old man did to you, he gave you the smarts to get sober and to have a great life and enjoy your family and to help touch people around the world. And so, it was a blessing in disguise.
All right, so what occupies your time these days, better than your charity work?
I still do some charities, not as much as I can. I'm on Sirius XM every Monday, every Friday, 6 to 8 p.m., channel 93. Monday and Friday nights at the fights with Randy Gordon. And we highlight upcoming fights. We bring on actors. We bring on actresses. We bring on, comedians. Tracy Morgan comes on, Jackie Martling, fighters. And we talk about the fight game and people's experiences with it. And we break down fights, and we tell people what's going to happen, and we listen to them, and we talk the fight game, and it's the greatest show on earth. And
all right,
I also do some boxing programs. I work with kids and adults, and I make appearances. I do fight nights around the country. I do golf tournaments to raise money for kids. and have a great family, great wife, and 3 kids that I've been blessed with. And I love them more each day.
Well, it was great to have you on the show tonight, Gerry. And, really, we've had athletes in other sports, similar situations, the way they turn their lives around and the way they end up helping so many other people. And it's always a pleasure to speak to somebody such as yourself.
Well, I really like that a lot. Next time you're in New York, I want you to give me a call because I want to get in the ring with you.
That's fine with me, Gerry. We'll go right now because I'm ready. I'm 48 years old. I just had knee surgery. I just had, I got a heart procedure to do yet, but once that's done, we'll get it on.
What kind of procedure? Your heart?
It's just I got an SVT. They basically just burn it off. They've actually let me put it off until my son's high school football seasons are over because I coach their teams, but it's nothing serious. They thought at first it was. They did a catheterization on me, found out it was nothing but that, so I'm fine. So, yeah, we can go. It's just you got to stay at least 6 feet away from me at all times. So
don't worry, but once the bell rings, I'm going to stay right on top of you.
Well, I'm probably just going to curl up in field position, Gerry.
Listen, you remember what Richard Pryor said. Richard Pryor said he's in the ring fighting. He says, here comes a guy coming fighting you. The punch starts out of Missouri and gains speed. He said, there you are, you're laid on the canvas, he says, and you always get one of those assholes out in the crowd saying, get up, get up. He said, that's you, that's how I got here. But
well,
anyway,
the thing that always drives me nuts is when you hear fans call a fighter a bum. And I don't care what the fighter's record is or what they've done. If you get the courage to walk in that ring, you're nowhere near a bum.
Well, yeah, to climb up those 4 steps and wait for the bell to ring. I always tell people, sometimes people, they're cruel. And they ask them, by the way, what is it that you did that was so great with your life? And then they kind of quiet down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because usually the first person to yell, you're a bum, is somebody that's actually a bum.
There you go. Well, you know what? Listen, we're blessed. We have a great life. We get to touch people, you on your radio show, me on my radio show, and our lives. And we have a great family. And I love the fight game, and the fight game is so good right now. Triple G and Alvarez. Who are you picking?
I got Triple G, as long as the age hadn't caught up to him. I just think that Canelo's more made for him. I think he's going to stand in front of him. I think Triple G will get him.
Yeah, Triple G is a natural middleweight. Canelo is smaller. And listen, Triple G's got a great jab.
Yeah.
And Alvarez got to come in to fight. And when he does, he's going to get stung by Triple G. So I'm with you all the way.
And my biggest problem with Canelo is he hadn't fought anybody in a while. Chavez Jr., the people that thought that was going to be a great fight, and we did a weekly boxing show, and we had K9 Bundridge and Steve Cunningham on to discuss the fight, and I just didn't see how with Chavez and the guys he's lost to in his past, how people bought into Oscar De La Hoya's PR and actually bought that fight at the rate they did.
You're not kidding. And, but listen, he's fought some tough guys. He fought Lara. He fought...
yeah, but I'm talking about just in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's a big bang. He knocked out Amir Khan. He is a legitimate fighter. But I don't think
he's a hell of a fighter. I just don't think he's big enough.
Right. So listen,
I got a question for you. What's your opinion on Mayweather and McGregor?
I think I hope it does not hurt the game, because I think people are going to be caught up in the, in the rah-rah of the game of it, and it's going to be a beatdown. Once McGregor gets tired, Mayweather's going to do what Mayweather does, and he's going to beat him up, and the referee's going to stop it.
Yeah, I don't know your opinion, but I don't see how this could turn out good for boxing almost any way you do it. It's a no-win situation. If Mayweather blows him out, he's supposed to. But if McGregor gives him a little bit of trouble, now I don't think he can, but you also have a boxer that hadn't fought in 2 years, and he's 40 years old.
Yeah, but I don't think Mayweather's going to blow him out of there. I think that Mayweather's going to cover up on the ropes, use his jab, and then wait for McGregor to get tired. And that's going to take 6 or 7 rounds. You remember when he fought, Maidana?
Yeah.
Maidana got him on the rope, stayed on there. He looked great till he got tired. Once he got tired, maybe it took over, and that's what's going to happen with
yeah,
this
but the
guy
difference
with
is
no
this.
experience.
Maidana is a damn good boxer. Conor McGregor is not a boxer. My biggest problem with it is all the guys that don't get a chance to fight on a card like that against Mayweather, because when they say that this is what the fans want, it's not what I want. I'd rather see Mayweather fight Canelo again, or maybe go up and try to risk fighting Triple G if he wants to fight again.
Right, I agree with that, but it's a freak show. People want it, comes along, and he's going to make a lot of money with it. And listen, he's some promoter, that guy.
Yeah. Real quick, one last question. Just get your thoughts on the heavyweight division and Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder.
You know what? I like Deontay Wilder. I like Anthony Joshua. Two great guys. I think that Anthony Joshua is more natural for heavyweight. He's a very tough kid. Now, Deontay Wilder can punch, and I'm friendly and fans of both those guys. The heavyweight divisions has come back with real heavyweights. When the Klitschko's fought, they fought a bunch of blown-up cruiserweights. You got Parker, you got King Kong Ortiz, you got so many fighters coming up now in the heavyweight division that we're going to see some great fights over the next bunch of years. But the fight that we're waiting for is Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, and I hate to tell you this, but right now I'm siding with Anthony Joshua after what he did to Klitschko.
Yeah, because Joshua, I think, is just a more polished fighter. I mean, I think the amateur career was a little better, won the gold medal. And I tell you, Wilder just still, he has a tendency to just swing wildly at times. And if he does that against Joshua, I don't think the fight's going to last very long.
Well, also when Wilder fought that Polish guy in the Garden, I think it was, and he got hit on the chin, he buckled him. And Joshua, that happened to Joshua. Joshua can finish him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm not convinced.
I'm a big fan of Wilder and Joshua, and I'm just excited about that fight. And listen, I'm looking for Rigondeaux is going to fight Lomachenko. They're talking about.
Yeah, I know. That's a fight I definitely want to see. Jeremiah, who usually does the boxing shows with me, is a huge Lomachenko fan. So always give him a hard time, but he is a hell of a fighter. I would favor Lomachenko there just because I've seen Rigondeaux, even though he's a great defensive fighter, he has a tendency to lean in sometimes and get caught. And I think Lomachenko will get him at some point. What do you think? Well,
it's two masters. I mean, obviously, Rigondeaux's a lot smaller. He's 2 weight classes down, I think, from him. And he wants to fight at the catch weight. But, it's an interesting fight because no one could beat Lomachenko. This guy, Rigondeaux, has the tools to be able to beat him, maybe.
Yeah, he's got the tools to beat anybody because he's a great defensive fighter, but he can definitely crack, too.
And there's nobody to beat Lomachenko.
No, not unless he moves up, maybe.
Unless he moves up to 40, and that's a little tougher weight class, but I still think he's just a dominant, great fighter. He's a gift to boxing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is this. It seems that boxing's getting a lot of these gifts lately. So hopefully they can promote it right, get a little bit more of it on free TV so you can build a fan base. Because I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s, the Olympics were a big deal. So if you won an Olympic gold medal, I remember the 84 Olympic team, their first card was on primetime ABC television on November night in Madison Square Garden. You had Holyfield, you had Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Mark Breland all fighting their first fights there. That's how you build a fan base, and that, I think, has kind of been lost on the promoters, and everybody's into the pay-per-view and the HBO and the Showtime.
Well, that's right.
It needs to be on free TV.
Well, and that's right, but, I got to tell you something. I really, appreciate Al Heyman, but it's cost him a lot of money to put these fights on all these last few years. I don't know if that can survive,
Yeah, and then they just did the deal. I will give Bob Arum props for once. The Pacquiao Horn is on ESPN, which I think that'll do big numbers for ESPN. That's a fight that nobody probably would have bought. I know a lot of people don't know a lot about Jeff Horn. We actually had him on as our prospect for the future like a year ago on the show. He's a great kid. I think he's biting off more than he can chew, but hopefully he can give a good performance in Australia against Pacquiao.
Well, you only hope that Manny Pacquiao can get up for a fight of that caliber.
Well, plus with his age, you never know
Right.
when things just aren't going to be there some night.
Well, that's right. So,
which is why I would really like to see Vladimir Klitschko not fight Joshua for a second time.
And me too. I mean, let's let him. Listen, in losing, he did great for his career. In losing that night,
because the way he lost, people took
right.
I mean, he got a lot more respect than he did, but not by knocking out everybody else in Europe and no Americans seeing it. I mean, he put up a great fight that night.
I think that Emmanuel Stewart was in his head that night because that's what Emmanuel Stewart was always trying to get him to fight like.
Yeah, and I mean, I have nothing but respect for both Klitschkos. I think Vitaly was a little tougher in the end, so I think Vitaly may have been. I would take Vitaly as the better of the two. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but
I think Vladimir is a better skilled fighter, but the other brother had lots of guts.
Yeah, the fight against Lennox Lewis on 1 or 2 weeks' notice when Kirk Johnson pulled out for the heavyweight title. Right. There's not many guys that could have done that because Lennox Lewis was a great champion.
Well, yeah, and that's the deal is that Lennox Lewis only had a couple weeks to train. I don't know why he took that fight. But sure,
I mean, he had Kirk Johnson, which is a totally different fighter than Vitaly Klitschko, also.
Right.
But it also tells you that I think Lennox Lewis knew that was going to be his last fight.
Well, you know what? He's living fine. He's happy now. He's made a lot of money.
Yeah, and he was a great champion. I think it gets overlooked because he gets a little overshadowed by the Tysons and the Holyfields. But he beat both of them. No matter what the age was, he did beat them both in the ring.
Right. You know who I was with this past weekend? I was up in Canada for a fight night that they put on there for the community. And I was with Joe Calzaghe, who hasn't fought in 8 years, retired undefeated. What a guy.
Yeah,
what
a great
guy,
fighter.
What a champion. And get to spend the weekend with him, and it was a terrific time. So, listen, I'll tell you, thanks for the phone call. Anytime, I'd love to do it again for you, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot, Jerry.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Yep. All right, guys, make sure you check out all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Anywhere you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. Later on this week, we're going to have former lightweight champion Greg Haugen on the show. We will have a baseball legend show with Jay Johnstone. Make sure you check out our sponsors, ReplenishingCareTechnologiesInc.com, GridironMo.com, and then, of course, Power Plus Mouth Guards. You can check all those out on thegruelingtruth.net, where you can catch all of our articles, all of our shows also. So for Gerry Cooney, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.